I guess I didn't swag enough. Stupid fruity pebble chain. We bag enough. I guess I didn't swag enough. Stupid fruity pebble chain. We bag enough. Poppin' tan model BC couldn't brag 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 enough. I guess I didn't swag enough. Stupid fruity pebble chain.
And welcome once again to another episode of the Horizon Roundtable. I am Bob McDonald, and joining me is my co-host Jim Sero.
Hey, Bob, I am really excited about this episode. We've got several of our esteemed young media members around the league here. I think number one to talk about Noah Yankee's victory in the cross-country championship this weekend, but probably more importantly, to learn a little bit about how men's basketball fits in on each of the campus coverage plans for the upcoming year. So this is going to be a great episode. I hope everybody else enjoys it.
Is this the part where I sadly say that we have no member of Green Bay Student Media coming in? Sorry. But you can find us on the web at horizonroundtable.com. You can find Jim on Twitter at Jim Sero. You can find links to all of our social sites and sites where podcasts are available at horizonroundtable.com/subscribe. Become a patron, patreon.com/horizonroundtable. If you're not doing that right now, new stuff is coming up every week. It's $1 a month. Patreon.com/horizonroundtable. Before we get started, I do want to make mention, since we are recording this on a Sunday, the regular season starts, and we got a special thing going on because NEC Blitz with AJ Mayoski, who actually contributed to us a couple years ago. He started NEC Blitz, and they are doing the live play-by-play for Chicago State, their first game against Cleveland State. So naturally, we had to get involved, and Kyle Rossi is going to be on that broadcast with AJ. You can actually go to horizonroundtable.com. You'll actually see the link to that live broadcast right at the top of the page. But as you alluded to, Jim, this is one of my favorite episodes because this is the Student Media Forum, and as I've mentioned nonstop over the past decade, I am a product of student media. So obviously, I am extremely happy to do this again. And this is kind of our longest running annual thing, by the way. We've been doing this since 2019, so I'm glad we could do this even more. But before we get to our traditional student media folks, the first thing I wanted to do is I talked with Allison Baumgartner. Allison is the general manager of what was a Cleveland State student radio station, WCSB, which I've alluded to a couple of times. Kind of got done dirty by Cleveland State. And so before we get to the forum itself, I wanted to segue into my conversation with Allison. We're going to do that right now. All right, so I am joined by Allison Baumgartner. Allison was the general manager of what was WCSB, Cleveland State student radio station, until somebody over at Cleveland State decided that shouldn't exist anymore. And now Allison is kind of leading the front on what's called XCSB, and you can find that at xcsb.org. Allison, thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate having you on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Bob. It's really great just to be able to talk about this issue.
It's funny because I knowing the history of WCSB, it's kind of outside of our wheelhouse, since obviously, Horizon Roundtable is a sports podcast.
Right.
And so, but as somebody who has been long affiliated with Cleveland State for many reasons, I understand the importance of that radio station, and that everything just kind of happens so abruptly that it didn't and still continues not to sit right with me. But I wanted to ask you too, because this was just kind of the latest in some of the things that you were involved with. I know previously you were kind of the organizing force in some events, kind of pointing out some of the lack of transparency with the university. Kind of to ask to walk us through kind of those events prior to all this going down.
Yeah, sure. So there were definitely a lot of warning signs that something was going to be happening to all student organizations on campus, but also specifically to WCSB Cleveland as a student organization. The first thing was when Dan Lenhart was let go from the university. That was probably our first sign that something was up. He was not only the head of student organizations, he was also our media specialist. So he was the person with the knowledge of how to do the quarterly reports, the FCC filings, and some of the more intricate details of operating a college radio station on a college campus. So that was kind of the precursor for everything in January. But as we continue to try to operate within the new Center for Campus Engagement with its new administration under Dr. Tashel Banks and Mr. Jarrett Pratt, we fell into a lot of issues of transparency and getting stuff done. Over 8 or 9 months, we failed to even get paper in our printers without waiting for 5 months. And that's just one example of how the lack of transparency and lack of effectiveness of the Center for Campus Engagement really started to affect our organization. But then we started talking to other student organizations, not in an official capacity, but in a more conversational tone about what's your experience with the Center of Campus Engagement. And it really spurred us to start calling the Center for Campus Engagement and its administration out prior to our closure as a radio station. So 2 weeks prior to the WCSB reprogramming, we were in fact in the quad between Rhodes Tower and the Student Center, trying to bring students together around the issue of lack of transparency and lack of communication and lack of financial transparency with the Center for Campus Engagement and its operations. Ultimately, it was something that was going to bring all student organizations together. We were on that path to really unify students at the university, to protect future students and future organizations from this happening to them. But we've had to kind of pivot our approach to be a more community-based approach, still talking about those issues with the Center of Campus Engagement and student organizations, but taking a much more communal, free expression angle to our cause, especially around the issue of XCSB and what our future looks like now that Cleveland State and IdeaStream entered into a partnership together.
I want to talk about that financial part of this because and correct me if I'm wrong, WCSB was what's called a general fee organization. Basically,
correct.
Students' general fee money, they pay money every semester, and a certain portion of that money, not much, but a certain portion of money goes to certain student organizations that includes student government, campus activities board, and student media such as the Cauldron, the Vindicator, and up until October 3rd, WCSB. My question is, where did that money go? Where is that money going? Did they just stuff it in a bag and bury it or something?
I don't I can explain a little bit. I don't really have a clear answer, if I'm going to be honest. What I can say is that, yes, $55.40 of every student's tuition goes into like this general fee pot. And that like accumulates every semester and then is dispersed to the general fee advisory committee and the general fee organizations, and then organizations with clubs and orgs under them then disperse funds another time, right? So WCSB historically has received around $60,000 to $62,000 every fiscal year of the general fee budget, and I really do not know where the general fee budget that was going to WCSB is going to now, because we still haven't received our student leadership scholarships, which were covered by the general fee, which, raises some questions as to where is that money and why is that not being put into the proper accounts it should have been in at the start of the semester.
Hmm. Interesting you mentioned that because at the beginning of the year, uh, Cleveland State announced they were getting rid of three sports, and the wrestling community had the exact same question because 10 years ago, the university added a fee to fund that, and nobody's answering those nobody ever answered those questions either. Just kind of let
Yeah.
that fall by the wayside. So now since the closure, I know I know you and of course by extension your organization now as it stands has been very active in terms of organizing. I know basically everybody but the Easter Bunny has put together legislation to kind of decry this. I know student government has. I know the city of Cleveland has. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised the state legislature hasn't really jumped in, although I suspect that this is one of those fights they hope nobody wins. Um, as far as that public pressure is concerned, it it doesn't seem like that's going away anytime soon. And you can tell me about some of the other things that are coming up. I know that there's a demonstration there. This is posting on Sunday. There was a demonstration on the on Saturday. As well. But what else do you guys have coming up as far as kind of future organizational type events?
Yeah, the one thing I would like to clarify beforehand is it's not legislation in the sense that it's legally applicable and binding. It's resolutions basically saying
Yeah,
that these political bodies within and without the university just stand with WCSB and its student and community population, which has a different dynamic to it. It
sure.
certainly allows those organizations to take further steps, but it is not legally binding in any way. Yeah,
Yeah,
we did do our next protest on Saturday, the 1st, and it's actually fall visit day for prospective students of the university. We gathered in the quad like we have been doing because this is a prime opportunity to tell new students of Cleveland State University and students thinking about Cleveland State University how the campus really treats its students, its professors, and the communities that they serve to a broader extent. We are also working on being part of public comment at the Cleveland City Hall, at the Cleveland Cuyahoga Arts Council meetings, at the faculty senate meetings on campus, at the SGA meetings on campus. We're really trying to touch and talk to every single facet that can work for us or has historically worked for IdeaStream or donated money to IdeaStream, because the more people we are able to bring this issue to on a personal level, but also on a political and social level, the more we are able to pressure Cleveland State University and IdeaStream into potentially amending or dissolving their partnership agreement.
yeah. Well, my other question, and I don't know if this has been asked, is there any opportunity for any kind of legal action to move forward at all?
I really can't speak on it too much. What I can
Sure.
say is that it is something we have explored and are exploring. The main questions that come about when we talk about legal action is how is that being funded, if at all? And what question are we trying to get answered? And at least for the time being, we are not prepared to
Sure.
make any of those statements very clear on a legal level.
Gotcha. Okay. Um, a- as far I know that one of the other things that you're attempting to transition to um is to at the very least get access to the offices. And that
Correct.
seems to be kind of a large pain in the ass process too, it looks like.
It's definitely the terms that Cleveland State University and the Center of Campus Engagement have proposed to us in regards to our station space and the offices within that space were lackluster at best, and we are currently trying to negotiate or find a proper compromise that can serve the students and our community members while also being within the purview of the Center for Campus Engagement, and what the administration of Cleveland State finds acceptable. These are ongoing conversations. So unfortunately, it doesn't look like it's going to be solved anytime soon. But what I can say is that we are working very swiftly and diligently in order to get these questions answered.
Sure, sure. One last thing I had to ask, and this is regards to the whatever I've been calling it, the Timu 107.9 the wave, 107.3 the wave, whatever this jazz neo crap is. By the way, anybody outside of Cleveland who doesn't know who this is, if you haven't looked this up already, I've mentioned it a couple of times in past episodes. Look it up. You know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know what I'm talking about, why are you listening? But this whole entire the last whole entire thing that never really sits well with me is this idea of, you know, this Timu version of 107.3 the wave, I'm not calling it what it is this whole thing about quote unquote internships, even though IdeaStream has always had internships at Cleveland State, and the students that it would be, my understanding would be students that are kind of outside, that would be targeting just certain, you know, certain majors and student colleges. But knowing the radio station as I do, I know full well that not only are there students of outside of those kind of majors and those kind of colleges, but a lot of those programs are DJ'd by volunteers that don't even go to school there anymore. I'm assuming that Cleveland State has had absolutely no answers for you on that either.
Well, you know, when we actually look about the dynamics of this deal, we can look at the WKSU deal that IdeaStream entered with Kent State in 2021, as well as kind of the beta test for the kind of partnership agreement that they have entered with Cleveland State University. What we do know is that Cleveland State, it holds a non-commercial educational license. Mm-hmm. So it needs to define, and whoever is programming on that signal needs to define and demonstrate that they are providing opportunities to students. But if we look at the partnership agreement, it says more about what Cleveland State and Laura Bloomberg will gain from this deal than what students will gain from this deal. There is no exact number of internships that will be offered at the radio station now. There is no exact details of what those internships entail, and there is no information about how those internships will differ from the pre-existing internships that IdeaStream offered within Cleveland State University. And, you know, this comes to a larger issue. We start to think, why was this deal done? And when we look at the FM dial, especially in Northeast Ohio, we realize that there is no space on that dial. And the only way for a non-commercial organization and corporation like IdeaStream to get more space on the dial, it already had 2 spots on the dial and a television station. The only way for it to get more space is to enter into these agreements with universities, and this might be speculation, but with universities that are susceptible to political and social pressure in the near future. And that's what we're really seeing with this Cleveland State deal. And we're seeing how this deal did not have the students of Cleveland State University, nor the communities that they serve in mind. It essentially had IdeaStream's access to another FM signal in mind and Laura Bloomberg's personal gain.
So effectively, Cleveland State sold their student radio station out for a set of magic beans.
Well, they can't sell it. It's in essence
I'm sorry, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they traded it for some magic beans.
Correct. Yeah. So just to clarify, the partnership agreement outlines that IdeaStream will receive the FM signal and do programming on the FM signal and be able to get all the transmitter equipment from our station space. And Cleveland State will receive X amount of internships, an indefinite amount of internships, very ambiguous, on top of getting 1,000 underwriting spots, essentially nonprofit ad spots across the 4 stations that IdeaStream has, and a personal board seat for Laura Bloomberg. Again, it just goes into this larger issue of who does this really serve, and why was this partnership agreement signed and made? It certainly wasn't for the students nor our communities at WCSB and XCSB.
Yeah. No, you are not kidding. Well, Allison, thank you very much for joining us. As I mentioned, all updates can be found on the new website xcsb.org. Where else can folks find you guys online? I know you guys are on. I know you guys are on Instagram and Twitter and even Blue Sky. And by the way, since you guys are on Blue Sky, you dropped the average age of Blue Sky down to 35, so that's helpful.
Yeah, you can find us on all social media platforms at XCSB Cleveland. On all of those platforms, we also have our YouTube page as well, which will be updated with Halloween ball footage and has some of our last live sessions as well uploaded before the station closed. And that's at XCSB Cleveland as well. Yeah, just stay tuned on xcsb.org. That's where we post all of our news and media updates. That's where we post our current updates within and without the university, and also general information for our community to move forward.
All right. Well, so once again, thank you. Thank you once again for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Bob.
All right, Jim. So as I mentioned at the beginning of in the introduction, this is probably one of our most well attended student media forums since we've been doing it. This is 2019, so I'm already super excited. We haven't even gotten to any of the questions yet, so I'm gonna go ahead and get everybody have everybody introduce themselves. If you want to, tell us how you got into student media, and you can go ahead and do that. So I'm gonna start in the order of schools. So I'm gonna start with Cleveland State. Let's go ahead and introduce Derek Williams. He writes sports for the Cauldron. Derek, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, pleasure to meet you all. As you already know, I'm Derek Williams. So I am a sports specialist and journalist for the Cauldron, our student newspaper. It's been running since the 30s. So before Cleveland State was Cleveland State. There's a lot of history there and a lot of good things to talk about. But I'm a third-year student at Cleveland State studying journalism and promotional communications. I got into sports kind of because it was a little bit of a niche at Cleveland State within our news segments, and from there I've kind of carved out my own hole. But yeah, that's just a little bit about me.
All right. As ex-Cauldron myself, no pressure or anything, Derek. All right. So let's go ahead and move on down the road. And representing IU Indy with the Campus Citizen, that's Citlali Sanchez. Welcome, Citlali.
Hi, so my name is Silali Sanchez. I am a fourth year actually. So I'm a senior now, majoring in sports journalism, and then as well with a sport marketing minor. Like you mentioned, I am the sports editor for the Campus Citizen. That's something kind of new to me this year. That's something I just took on. So super excited to, get into it, editing stories, and also just being able to cover a whole range of sports.
Well, welcome. All right, moving on down the line, is Jack. Jack is a sports covers sports for the UW Post. Welcome, Jack.
Yeah, thank you. Like you said, I'm the assistant sports editor for the UWM Post, which has been around since 1956. And yeah, it's been fun. I'm a senior at UW Milwaukee, and I joined the Post last year, and I've been covering soccer, basketball since then. And yeah, it's been fun. It's been a blast, and I got an internship for midmajorbasketball.com this year, so I'll be covering the men's basketball team for Milwaukee this year as well.
All right. Welcome. All right. Next up, we got Michael. Michael is covers sports for the Oakland Post. Michael, thank you very much for joining us. As we've had many Oakland Post folks write for us, it's always great to have you here. Folks from there have to be here.
Thanks. My name is Michael. I cover sports, but mainly basketball as of right now with the Oakland Post. Currently a senior right now, a marketing major with a minor in sports management. I'll be covering the basketball team pretty much game by game, and pretty much the whole Horizon League throughout the whole year. I got I'm very new here. Like this is my first year here. I got the job because I was aside, cover the team. I also, getting some more opportunities through there. So, yeah, it's been a good experience so far. I'm really excited for the season as Oakland starts off their trifecta of a season with literally tomorrow. So, yeah, I'm very excited.
All right. Well, welcome. All right. Next up from RMU Century Sports is Joey. Joey, you guys always have like an army in the sports section, so I'm glad I knew I would get at least one of the guys from RMU Century Sports, and I'm glad you are the latest in a long, proud line of those RMU Century Sports folks to join us. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there's been a lot of guys that I know I've been told about before that just been covering a lot of sports very heavily. So my name's Joey Dramasic. I'm a sophomore here at RMU. I'm the assistant sports editor for Century Media, our student-run news organization. Kind of why I got into like sports media. Just I love sports, so like if I'm not going to be playing it, might as well cover it, be a part of the action on the sideline, whether I write it, take photos for it, sideline reporter, anything like that, really.
All right. Well, welcome. And last but certainly not least is CC from the Jam Bar at Youngstown State. Again, anytime we get a somebody from the Jam Bar representing, it's always great. We've had more than our share of contributors from the Jam Bar. So welcome, CC.
Yeah, hi, I'm Cece. I'm a second year student at YSU. This is my first year writing for the Jam Bar. I also run cross country and track for YSU, so I think that kind of gives me a unique perspective on the sports side of things. So yeah, it's been a good experience so far. I love my colleagues and John, who has been on here before and kind of gave me this opportunity to be on here today. So I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. I know John. Yeah, John Ostapowicz, who actually wrote the Youngstown State women's preview for us during preview week. So I know he's busy. He's doing the play-by-play for the Horizon League tournament for the women. So that he couldn't pass up that opportunity. I know he's his broadcasting. He's done a lot of broadcasting over the years at YSU. So, but we are certainly glad to have you, CC. So I wanted to before we talk about, because I wanted to ask a couple of questions about what your perspectives of the conference in general is. I wanted to ask you guys about the state of student media as it is today. We did have in our first segment we talked to Allison Baumgartner from WCSB, which was the Cleveland State student radio station, and now that's not there anymore. So I guess I wanted to bring it to you guys about as you are coming into this, as you are members of student media now, what do you guys see as kind of the challenges being part of that, part of a platform for at these respective schools, and what concerns do you have as it relates to that, especially given how volatile in certain places the student media is within some of these college environments.
You mind if I start off?
Sure.
So, because that's kind of what I've been, I guess, covering or doing research on for quite a bit. So, one of the main drawbacks of working, because like sometimes they release newspaper or they'll release newspapers or papers in the post, which certain audiences or certain target markets would like to read, but
Hmm.
also like when like just students as like the whole Gen Z, they're gonna want to read it online. And if they don't see it on their phones, or if they don't know how they can see it on their phones, or they're just not going to be aware, they're just not going to know about it at all, unless you're on social media. And when I say you're on social media, I mean you're verified, you're posting every other day, you have a following, and all this, which takes a lot of work. So
Oh yeah.
so like the older forms of media, like the radio and like newspaper, it is kind of I mean, I'm not saying it's like completely outdated, but it is more turning into like people just want to hear podcasts or people talking on podcasts, whether it's on Spotify, YouTube, etc., or they just want to see, post about it online. Like if they'll be willing to read an article or at least parts of an article if they can see it on their socials, like, with Twitter, Instagram, or whatever. But if they don't see it there, they're probably not going to go out and search it for themselves, and they're probably just not going to know about it at all. So it's it just kind of takes a lot of adjusting to like new forms of media, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
Hey Bob, can I jump in and just ask a couple specific questions
Absolutely.
related to maybe
Certainly.
to the challenge? I was preparing ahead of time. So, CC, this one's gonna be for you if you're ready to go here. So, first of all, congratulations on yesterday. I think your team did pretty well, if I saw the results correctly at the cross country championship. But a question I have for you, a challenge, like outside, like I live in Wisconsin, I perceive Youngstown State to be, for sports, a football school. Does that create any kind of, issue in terms of covering the other sports? Is there a lot of interest in some of the other sports on campus, or is football, the dominant, for the Jam Bar as well?
Well, from my experience, I would say that football is definitely very dominant at YSU, and it's definitely covered every week. But I think that we do a really good job, at least John does, because he's in charge of delegating the sports, of getting coverage on other sports. Obviously, our bowling team also won the national championship last year, so we've been doing like a lot of coverage on them also. So I feel like, and a lot of our other sports have been doing really well. Like our cross country and track team just won the Horizon League, men's and women's, and our women's basketball team is seeded to do pretty well this year. So I feel like we've I don't really think that football gets all the attention, if that's what you're asking. I think that everyone gets a pretty equal amount of attention, and I think that we recently have been doing a good job of getting coverage of all like other sports. Like volleyball also has been getting a lot of coverage, but we do cover football every single week. But that's just because they're in season right now, and I feel like people are expecting it also. So like that's what a lot of people want to read about and grab our newspaper and stuff. So obviously we want to keep covering them because a lot of people like reading that type of stuff. But I don't really think that we've been neglecting other sports either.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I don't mean to insinuate that you're neglecting other sports. I was just curious if the demand was for football primarily, because that's what everybody around the league thinks, is that it's a football school as opposed to all the other sports. But that's a really great feedback. So
Yeah, I mean, I never really thought of us that way. Like I've never heard that we were only a football school, and that's interesting to me that everyone in the league thinks that we're a football school, which maybe I'm just like not like talking to the right people, I guess, or something. And I'm like also very new to sports reporting and stuff. But yeah, I guess that I could see why people would think that also.
And then, Sitlali, I have a question for you over with the Campus Citizen. So, my understanding for IU Indy is that there's a large amount of like postgraduate students as part of the student body there. Does that create a different issue in terms of sports coverage and what the Campus Citizen's reporting? Is there a lot of demand on campus for sports information when you've got so many people who are whether it's in the medical school or other things that they're that might not be like when I was in my undergraduate, I sports. 5 and I get highlights on Sports Center at night. So I was just curious how that looks. And to Michael's point about virtual and people, if they can't see it, are the postgraduates that are part of your student body looking for sports coverage, or how does that all play out for you?
So I'm gonna be honest, I'm not really sure, but what I do know is that on campus there really isn't like a big like wanting for sports coverage just because we are a big commuter school. So a lot of the students, that includes me, is a commuter, so I'm not living on campus. And so that's always the challenge is how do we get students to come out to events, or even how do we get them interested in athletics? And so that's always like the biggest challenge that we have. But I think this year, I think every editor and then our president has been doing such a good job of pushing like the Campus Citizen, as in covering more things, spreading out the word. Because I feel like sometimes it's just mostly known in the journalism department and not really in other places. And so we've really been doing a good job of pushing whether it be on social media, um, word of mouth, any way that we can to really push for it because right now we know that journalism is being censored, especially at Indiana University, and I know that at other schools as well. And so it really hasn't affected us in the same way outlets as other outlets have. However, that is what we want to try to push is that we're going to be covering things and that if people want to read sports, then that's what we're here for. We're here to cover those and give them, information and then also working with the athletic department in some of the sports that we don't really cover. And so working with them to cover those sports that don't get as much attention.
Awesome. Hey, Joey, the flip side of that, my understanding over on campus at Robert Morris is that about 80% of the student body is undergraduate and about 57% of those live on campus. Does that kind of like more tie into what you guys do with the sports coverage? Is there a greater demand on campus that you're seeing for sports information because you've got a lot more, people who are right there and can walk over to the arenas or soccer field or whatever and see a game? Like, how does that impact your coverage for the Century?
Yeah, so Century, like we have a lot of people that like want to be involved, but I guess with like the students as a whole, like everything, like from one end of campus to another, it's a 10-minute walk. It's kind of just one big like circle. So like everything that like say an event it's in reach of people that are like living on campus. So a lot of the stuff that like I'm tasked with, and then the person ahead of me, Josh Woodman's tasked with within sports especially is like trying to get ways that people like want to like write or read about like not write exactly but read about like our sports and stuff. So there's a higher demand, especially with I guess bringing in like kind of like the freshmen and sophomores for like the campus life, like trying to get them involved to enhance like the like college experience for college students. So I would say there's a higher demand than I think other schools that maybe be more commuter based schools. But yeah.
So I actually have a question to both Derek and Sitlali because you're both in, for lack of a better phrasing, two media markets that by and large kind of do not cover your respective schools the way that maybe that Youngstown does or even the Pittsburgh region does with Robert Morris. Do you find that there might be any, given that there's kind of a dearth of coverage for like IU Indy sports or Cleveland State sports, do you feel like there might be some extra added pressure for you guys to bring some stories to light that, to be perfectly honest, would never be brought to light outside of campus?
I would say that yes, there is definitely an added pressure. Coming in, well, I'm kind of new to the Campus Citizen in general. I just joined last semester and then just this semester took on the sports editor role. Definitely, there has been a lot of pressure that I've put on myself, not really anyone else putting pressure on me. It's just been what I want to accomplish within the year as sports editor. And I think one of the biggest issues is just getting writers. Like there's so many stories to write, but sometimes it'll just be me covering the sports. And so it's kind of hard to do everything that I would like to do with not having as much help. But I feel like so far it's been good. Like we've been doing a good job of assigning stories, getting coverage, and like I mentioned before, working with the athletic department to kind of see, what stories could we highlight? Where could we add more coverage that wasn't added before?
And yeah, so as a bit of a follow-up to that, at CSU, our athletic department is very integrated into you find all the results, you find all of the coverage of like league championships. If there's any conference championships or anything important coming up, you can kind of find that on the athletics website. So what we try to do, especially with me, I'm our only sports specialist, I believe, within the school of Cleveland State. So
you are.
Yeah. So what I have to kind of do is instead of covering like the results of games or I mean, I will if I have to, but instead of covering things like that, where I can just kind of divert people towards the athletic website and have them look at them themselves because they write articles about the results of games. They write articles about conference championships and appearances and stuff like that. Rather than directly covering the results of games, what I try to do is go out of my way to get other stories about I think we have 16 athletic teams. So that's not including club sports, which also need some coverage as well. And what I have to do is go out of my way to find like, hey, how do we get people interested in these teams rather than tell them what's happening with the teams, right? I mean, we do tell them what's happening with the teams, obviously, but like, you know, the main thing is like introducing the population of Cleveland State, which primarily commuters who just go home at the end of their classes, right? How do we introduce them and get them interested in going to these games? What I've done is a few like sports introductions to teams, like the fencing team. I sat down and interviewed them and, kind of introduced people to the sport of fencing. I don't know how many people know the rules of fencing. And I wouldn't say it's too many, right? Granted, there's also a lot of stuff that goes on within, like each team has their own resources. Like our men's basketball team has a whole program where they introduce each and every individual player on the team. So it's just finding out which things need coverage and how to balance that need of coverage with all, like remembering I'm a college student and having other work to do.
Sure. Sure. All right.
Hey, Jack, I ask a question that kind of picks up on Bob's question for you being in Milwaukee. So, first of all, welcome to the podcast. As a UWM post, contributor, you and now also on the Horizon Roundtable episode here, you have some literal and figurative large shoes to fill. Shout out to our friend Jimmy Lemke. And one of the questions I have for you is like, I live in Milwaukee myself, so I've been seeing a lot of improved coverage for Panther basketball in particular. I know you said you cover the soccer and the women's soccer team, once again, kicking butt and taking names, which is awesome for them to see. But what I was going to ask you is like, I saw the Shepherd Express had an interview this week. Bart Winkler had an interview this week. Like, how do you kind of fit in when there's actually some improved coverage, around the men's basketball program? Where do you see your niche in fitting in? Whereas Derek and Silali are struggling to, with interest, there seems to be an abundance of interest right now in Panther basketball. Where do you see your fit?
Yeah, I think the way we kind of fit in is getting to the feature stories or whatnot, the stories about the players that like the bigger media won't necessarily cover. Like they'll talk, if something big happens, they'll cover it, but they might not get into the nitty-gritty of like a feature story about a player. I know Babatunde, who writes for the Mid-Major Basketball, covers Milwaukee men's basketball. He did a great feature story about JaMychal Stillwell last year. So just kind of fitting into those niches where the local news may not hit. But going off of what Salali said and like being a commuter school, mostly a lot of the same things she said, like the challenges finding writers is kind of similar for my experience with the UWM Post and Milwaukee. So I thought that was interesting to hear.
So let me I'm sorry, go ahead, Jim.
Oh, I was just going to ask one other question for Derek, since we're kind of talking about Cleveland State. So, Derek, when you're talking about like you've got a large abundance of commuters and getting them interested, one of my perspectives, again, if I'm way off on this, please let me know. But one of my perspectives surrounding Cleveland State athletics is that there's always like negativity kind of just around the financial component. And if it's needed on campus, if we saw some sports being eliminated, we're seeing the Wolstein Center in a state of flux. Does that create an extra hurdle to gain interest in athletics on campus, or are students not even aware of stuff that's happening on campus, in your opinion?
It's a weird mix because there's a lot of students don't even know the financial aspect of our sports organizations at all. And that's not because they don't want to, but rather just they're not interested in it, or they don't, go out of their way. But some of our wrestling program, which was canceled, was probably the biggest one that got canceled. CSU has been seen very recently as trying to save money, like being kind of snippy about their budgets. And like Laura Bloomberg, for example, they were looking at canceling the fencing team, but even that program was producing small profit. Like it was, I think, like $200,000 a year, which you wouldn't expect from a fencing team, but because their equipment is so cheap. I'm sorry if I'm not getting to the point of the original question, but essentially, like that perspective for students, where it's like, are the sports even worth investing into? Um, I don't think many people have that perspective because they don't really know, um, or even show that interest to begin with. I would say there's definitely a divide, and I've actually been doing research on it, between our students and our student athletes. Um, so yeah, I'll definitely look into that a little bit more, but for now, I can't say for certain.
The fencing thing is something I didn't know, though.
Yeah, it's really like weird, but a lot of the smaller, not smaller organizations, but a lot of the less focused on organizations are still there because they are producing some sort of profit, for Cleveland State. So it's really interesting. It's really interesting.
All right, so I want to kind of pivot to the league in general. Jack, I'm sure you've heard plenty about how of everybody and their grandmother, including us, picking Milwaukee to win the win the Horizon League in men's basketball this year. When you guys look at your respective teams, do you feel like and we get this question a lot. We got this question during the regular media forum about all these preseason prognostications. I know it's fun for us, and maybe it's a conversation topic, but from your guys' standpoint, do you find any value in some of the preseason things that not just ourselves but everybody else does?
There's a lot of it. I guess it kind of depends on where you're coming from. Like for me, I'm kind of a I mean, use this term lightly here, but I'm kind of a basketball nerd when it comes to stuff. So
Hey,
like
that's fine.
when I look at stuff like the preseason like player of the year, because the preseason player of the year was Tabaru, which obviously he's in Oakland and whatnot. And just I did a lot of research with a lot of numbers that maybe are a bit too complicated, with using a lot of other websites and whatnot. So yeah, I do it is very useful for those, and even just for those who just want to know even just a little bit about the colleges that they're going to, like incoming freshmen, I'll say
Mhm.
it's very useful for. um y- yeah, so I would say it is very helpful for like the casuals and also for people who look at it quite a bit more, especially if they're not too familiar with some of the players, because it is a mid-major conference, and it's like
Yeah.
right, Horizon is like right dead in the middle, where it's not like too low in mid-major, not too high, if you know what I mean. But yeah, I would say there is a lot of use for it, because it does introduce you to a lot of new players or players who came from D2, NAIA, or some other conference. Maybe they came from overseas or whatnot. So yeah, there's a lot of use for it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, also with like just students like on campus or people that go to the like each university and stuff. Like, say like for RMU, like last year we were ranked pretty low in like the preseason poll and stuff. So not a lot of people had any high expectations, but then as the team like got better, obviously more people started showing up, more people started caring and covering it. And then this year ranked fourth in the Horizon League, I think ranked second in your guys's preseason poll. A lot of people have like a lot more people are excited about this year's team with them being the reigning champs. So I just think for students on campus and people that are like really like have close relations to the university, the preseason polls kind of give like a good expectation of how the team should be. Now, obviously, they're not always correct, but I just think it's a good preview of how the team really is, obviously, with being a preseason poll.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
Joey,
I
did you
can
guys do
say
any? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I, I can say I'm glad I'm not the one doing the preseason prognostications, especially with so much roster turnover. Like, it would be hard for me to do. So I think the work you guys
See, these
do
are
and
things
other
that I
people
should be
do
saying to
is
myself every year,
important.
but no.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's very helpful, to get kind of a lay of the land, even if it's not perfect, which it's hard to be perfect, especially in this day and age. But I think it's a good rule of thumb, if you will, going into the season.
I, just to rub off of everyone, because I think one of the main reasons as to why it's really helpful now is because NIL era now is very hectic. So, I mean, I know for just like for RMU, for example, like if I'm not mistaken, Alvaro was there last year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
Um, and
Yeah.
obviously he was one of the best players in the country, period, let alone the Horizon League. So when you have players even that just perform even just a little bit well, they're transferring to a Power Five conference the very next year. So it's just like whatever players the people would know about end up transferring because they get a bag and then and end up getting an NIL bag. If it's only like 300, 200K, that's a lot more than what they were getting before. So they're going to end up
sure.
transferring. So yeah, it is very helpful for people who aren't too familiar because for Oakland, like if you guys look at Oakland's roster last year versus this year, it's like what, maybe two people stayed on the roster. So like
If we
everyone either
we thought for
graduated
sure it
or
was going to be
transferred.
free, but Cooper Craigs ran out the back door on us at the last minute.
Yeah, he was supposed to. Well, he was supposed to be. He was supposed to
Yeah,
be on the roster. Then it was like it was really last minute because at that point a lot of schools had already decided their rosters and whatnot. Then he kind of left.
yeah.
So and so yeah, it's one player also is supposed to be on a team, but he's not, but he still kind of is. So it's like, it's been but it's like how Oakland's situation is. I'm pretty sure is the same situation for a lot of other schools as well, because Oakland, you know, they didn't win the Horizon League last year, given. So I'm saying like they're still a top team, but because we have players that played even just a little bit well, yeah, they're gonna have Power Five schools sending them bags, even if it's just a little bit. It's more than what they're already receiving. They're gonna go and take it. So.
Sure. I
Hey,
just bring up
hey, Joey.
Cooper. Sorry, I wanted to bring up the Cooper Craigs thing because Griffin Beers did a feature on Cooper Craigs, and like a week later he transferred. Like, I'm sorry, Griffin. I think that's the second year in a row that happened to Griffin. By the way,
It's the new
It,
Sports
you
Illustrated
have to,
jinx.
yeah. If Griffin does a feature on you, there's a 50-50 chance you won't be there when the season starts.
Hey, Joey,
not too
with
much, not too much.
for Robert Morris in particular, so you kind of alluded to, the polls are a little helpful to build up that interest on campus, and yet you guys have the unique situation that Michael was just talking about, but almost on steroids with, I think it's what, like one scholarship player returning. Did
Yeah,
you
Ryan
tailor?
Pritchard.
Yeah, did you
Yeah.
guys tailor your coverage in this off season to kind of help to, build the story a little bit? What did you guys do, knowing that there's no faces from a really good team or one face from a really good team returning, and yet the team is still thought to be one of the top teams of the league? What did you guys do coverage wise or plan to do coverage wise with that?
Yeah, so all started last year, obviously with the like portal like opening, like everyone's leaving, so there's some like uncertainty, and then players committing to different places. But we kind of planned it as kind of like last year, like it's a whole new team. Last year they had 8 new players from the roster from the 23-24 season. This year we have 12 players. So we tried to get it to where introducing each player, like we still have a lot of stuff that has to come out obviously within the next 2 days of like each new player and like really who they are and like how impactful they can be towards this team, because some of them I think are coming from a few JUCO schools, some D2 schools. So just a lot of players that don't have like the D1 experience. But in terms of like your question, kind of just preparing it to where we like we think that the team can be good enough like to make another run at the Horizon League title, but just with all like the uncertainty of like, who was really staying, because I think Cam Woods at some point in the summer like still had relations to RMU in terms of like if he'd return back for another year. Obviously he didn't. So there's a lot of uncertainty with that, but just kind of making sure that like we cover it to where it's exciting enough for like students to read and like want to like take interest in the team this year, obviously with the championship being last year, and just making sure that like the new players, like people still think that it's going to be a good enough team with Coach Toole, who has done a great job here at RMU.
Yeah.
I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. That's great. Hey, Jack, picking up on that kind of similar question for you from a Milwaukee perspective. So one, I appreciate your
dedication to professionalism, because as a fan, I can't separate fan and media hats. And so you were like saying you didn't want to have to pick the preseason, but when your team is as good as
Jim,
Milwaukee's
you're
is
not
expected to
supposed to
be,
say that on the podcast.
oh please, nobody takes me seriously anyway, Bob.
You can edit it out. You can edit it out.
Nah,
I'm not. I'm going to
No.
expose him for the homer he is.
that's right. I thought that's why you asked me to be on this season, Bob.
Yes,
I mean,
that's true.
anyway, Jack, my point in my question was when you have a good team, and you have some returning pieces, that's a little bit different coverage than maybe what Joey had to provide. What have you guys done? Because you've got a Faison Fields and a Danilo coming back, and you've got some really not just continuity, but players that are important to what's going to be a successful season for you. How did you guys tailor your coverage, or plan to tailor your coverage with that?
Yeah, for me, I'm actually working on a story that I interviewed the three most tenured guys who have been there for this is their third season. So Simeon Murchison, Aaron Franklin, and Faison Field. So I'll kind of ask them what their experience has been like. But yeah, I mean, it's nice having seven returners. I think Bart Lundy said on Media Day that's the most in the Horizon League. So it's nice being able to like build off their stories from last year, how they do, and then you can compare it to this year, how they've grown, expectations, whatnot. So looking into that and like how the team has grown, especially with those players, is something we can tailor our coverage towards.
So one question I wanted to ask it related to the preseason. We talked about this last episode of like the concept of the so-called secret scrimmage. We didn't see a lot of stories about that this year, but we did see obviously we've seen a lot more in the way of exhibitions against other schools come out. And you always have a question, okay, depending upon how the team does, at least it didn't count. But in the case of like Youngstown State and Akron, we're like, oh man, I wish this game would have counted. As far as you guys are concerned, if you do happen to have your team play in an exhibition where you were able to see kind of get a little glimpse as to what the team is going to look like. How beneficial is that to have that kind of early look before the season starts?
It's been quite beneficial because like I said, I don't just look at because what I look at is not just like writing for the post. I look focusing on the team. I also focus on individual prospects as well because I focus on college basketball as a whole. So when it comes to players on Oakland or just players in the Horizon League, or really players in any D1 school, also just try to focus on some individuals, some more strengths that they have because at the end of the season, that's about maybe 100 scouting reports that me and some other people I've partnered with have to do, which is a lot. So with going into the season, because Oakland's played both Alma College and just this last week on Thursday, they played Rochester Christian. They won both games. Alma College, was a blowout. Rochester Christian was surprisingly a close game, given they had a couple players on that team, specifically number 7, where his not last name was Williams. I forgot. I think Tymace Williams was his name. He didn't look like an
Nassim
NAIA
Mashour's
player.
brother on that team?
What did you say?
Nassim Mashour, isn't one of his brothers on that team? I guess the other one's just on Oakland now.
It's Nassim and his brother Mo is what we call him.
Yeah.
It's been quite an experience. Now not my only fear, but my main one of my main fears is those are two teams to play, but there's two things. The first thing is it's a big roster turnover, so it's gonna take time naturally for those people to gel because they've never played together. You have different people, they've never played with certain types of people, so like it's a whole new system. And then on top of that, like compared to pretty much not even just any Horizon League school, I'd probably say almost any mid-major school. I think Oakland, like the first couple of games, has the worst or like the hardest schedule because you're playing.
Yeah, and it's
you're
not even
playing
close.
Literally 3 AP top 10 teams back to back to back, like no breaks in between. You're playing Michigan, Purdue, and Houston, Houston's arguably the best defensive team in the country, back to back to back. So when I say like it's been revealing, but it's also like I have a lot of reservations going into the season. I also like to be as realistic as possible, but also very hopeful because I work also with the basketball team directly. So it's just like, it's been quite the experience so far. But I'll say it's very revealing, but it's also like you don't really know where you're gonna get really. So
Sure.
I hope that answered your question.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Hey, CC, for a Youngstown State perspective, they had that game against Akron, which I had picked Youngstown State to win the league, so that like made me feel really good about my pick. But did you cover that game at all, or do you feel like that game was a good representation for where the Penguins are going to be when this thing starts up this week?
I'm gonna be honest, I'm not really familiar with men's basketball. I've never covered them, but I did see the game and I also was very impressed. And I do think that the Horizon League kind of did underestimate us. We had a lot of transfers come in and yeah, like I said, I'm not completely familiar with men's basketball, but yeah, I'm excited for this season because they looked really good.
To be clear, we picked them to finish tied for second with Robert Morris, and Jim picked them first. So, I had one last question, and this kind of goes. This kind of speaks to kind of some of the stories that have come out that aren't necessarily they're related to athletics, but not related to athletics. Some of the stories that have come up, especially in the off season, some good examples of this are the talks about the Wolstein Center. The recent thing the last couple of weeks ago, related to what's UW and Panther Arena. Joey, you probably saw this the other day. Apparently, Justice Williams is under investigation for this whole gambling flap. And I can't, and let's not forget the whole it seems to be ongoing situation with Paul Corsaro and his ouster from IU Indy. When stories like that come up, how do you all? And I'll leave it to you guys to answer any one of you to answer this. What approach do you guys take to stories when that don't necessarily include game coverage or talking to the players, but some of these broader issues that will still affect your respective athletic programs?
I think it's something that has to be covered in a specific way. So that's a story that we're currently working on. And I'm actually getting help from another editor because I've only really been doing like the outcomes of the matches or like just things like that. And so it's definitely something new, but it's also a way for me to kind of explore like a different genre of sports, if you will. So just how you kind of have to tread carefully in your coverage and always making sure that you're not really picking a side, but you're making sure to hear both sides and then include what they're telling you in the stories. And so I think that's going to be a challenge is just, again, seeing what they say, if they say anything, and then kind of crafting that story because yes, it's related to sports, but it's not really the outcome of a game. But it's something that can get people interested that people may not know about, that students may not know about. And then they see it and they're like, wait, this happened? Let me read about it. And that's a way also to get them into sports.
Yeah, I was gonna say with the whole Justice Williams thing being investigated with all the gambling stuff, I think it definitely does need to be covered just because like it's someone not covered as much as say if it were to happen to someone like on the team right now, but since he was a player for the Colonials for 2 years, I think it's something with the issue with all the gambling stuff. NBA players, few people being arrested with all the gambling rings going on. I think it's something that needs to be covered, but also needs to be covered kind of carefully because sure, all this is like work that's been like investigated, like all these reports. I don't know how much has been like fully been like confirmed with it all, but I think just to like get a understanding of like, I guess it'd be considered not national news, but more, it's more than just as you said, like a recap or like a game summary of something. So I just think
It's a lot less local is what you're saying.
yeah. It like levels to like how like what much like coverage it should get. but just because I think it's a former RMU player, one of the first college players to get accused of one of the gambling schemes recently. Just needs to get some coverage with it.
I do want to. Well, it. I'll say regarding the recent news, it really just depends on, I guess, your comfortability with journalism. Me personally, that's not something I would delve into because I mostly delve into like I guess like I said, the individual players, individual performances alongside actual team performances. And when it comes to that, just to like kind of branch off of what um Joseph and Satali said. Just you kind of want to like tread like very carefully when it comes to that because at the end of the day, you are a student, and yes, you are reporting, but and some people may obviously trying to go into journalism full time, especially post college and whatnot. But it's also like you're also just not trying to like because if you take sides even just a little bit, it just causes a lot of trouble, and people might start saying something, and then someone's blacklisted, and all this other stuff. It's stuff that you're consciously worrying about, like in the back of your mind, if you know what I mean. So it's just like you really just want to tread with whatever you say carefully, and sometimes people just don't want to talk about it at all. If it happens, and you just kind of like, it's a real thing. So yeah, that's just kind of my thoughts about it.
And I know you had mentioned the Wolstein Center and the news about the Wolstein Center a little bit, and I just wanted to talk about that as well. The way that we try to approach that kind of story, where it's like not directly related to a sports outcome, is just like work with the news team because we have people who are who specialize in news, and it may not be sports, but I feel like with these types of stories, you don't really need as much knowledge when it comes to the actual game itself. So with the Wolstein Center, what they're trying to do is get it renovated and get an actual like professional soccer team in there, and that's something.
Yes,
like,
USL.
yeah, and with that kind of thing, at least with that, that's more of a positive thing for us because it's like, okay, I mean, there's people who's gonna think that it's like a waste of money, but for the most,
I know how much the Wolstein Center burns every year, so
yeah. So for the most part, like that type of stuff is usually a longer form of story. So it's like it's an ongoing thing. And there's like negotiations within it where it's like, okay, is it official yet? Is it not official? So you kind of have to get an initial, like not punch out there, but you got to get an initial something out there to let people know that this is something that's happening, and then you follow up on that later.
Sure, absolutely. All right, Jim, did you have any other questions?
No, Bob, I do not.
All right. Well, you know what? Thank you guys for joining us. It was as I expected. You guys did an outstanding job. I love doing this every year. Loving having the representation across the Horizon League. Before we go, tell everybody where they can find you online.
Not all at
I'll
once.
go first.
I was just waiting.
Yeah, I'll go first. On Twitter, you can find me Jack, JCK __ 2 underscores. Laude, LAUDE. That's where you can find me.
I guess I can talk now. So for me, I primarily use Instagram. You can find me there at Derek capital D, 2 I's capital, and then Williams, and then I should pop up.
All right.
For me on X, you find me at Joey with a capital J _ Jermasek capital J IRMASEK, and then on Instagram Picks by JJ22, just some coverage that I do there for the teams.
All right.
On Twitter or X, you can find me at Mike O, username Mike _ Synaptic23. Also on I go by the same name, just Mike O on Instagram specifically, and also with the work that I also do with DraftStack. Also at the DraftStack on Twitter as well.
You can find me on Instagram at csanchez802 and then also on LinkedIn at Silali Sanchez.
You can just find me on Instagram. It's just Cecilia Chase _ all lowercase. And that's pretty much it.
All right. Well, thank you guys again. Again, just this is my favorite. This is one of my favorite episodes. And that's gonna wrap it up for us today. Next week we're into the regular season finally. It seems like this slam it took longer than it did during previous years. But until then, horizonroundtable.com. That's where you can find all of our articles, all of our past podcast episodes. You can find us where podcasts are available. And of course, you can find us where on your Amazon or Google devices. So tune in next week. Until then, thank you all for listening.